Welcome to Keep Going, a podcast about failure and success, hosted by John Biggs. Every week, we talk to an amazing person about a time they failed and what they learned. And remember, when you're going through hell, keep going.
Welcome back to Keep Going, a podcast about success and failure. I'm John Biggs. Today on the show, we have Denise Vitola. She's VP of Brand Strategy at Linkia.com. Linkia does a lot of influencer marketing. Isn't that right, Denise?
That is correct. That's what we do.
Okay, so welcome. I talked to you last week at South by. It was a great conversation, so I thought it might be fun to bring you on this platform as well. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you'd like to talk about today?
Yeah. So I've been in some form of marketing for my entire career, and worked a little bit in PR, and then transferred into integrated marketing, digital media, influencer, and just have been experimenting in the integrated marketing space for a really long time. Mostly working with large agencies, but I also had my own agency for a bit, and also worked most recently at Bayer for 5 years. And now I'm at Linkia, I'm about 2 weeks into this new job. So a lot of different experience with success and failure in various walks of life.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it was really pertinent that you said before when we were just talking before. You said you don't fail often, or you don't fail at all, which is actually, I think that's actually pretty badass if you really think about that statement, because you're saying something about yourself that's extremely confident, and I think that's also vital to a lot of startup stuff. But I wanted to see if there's something that we could share and we could work through.
Yeah, I think for me, John, the biggest thing is we all have failures, but I think it's the way that you approach a failure and the way that you think of it that really is the key differentiator. So for me, I want to fail fast. Like, that's my motto. Fail fast so I can learn from it, I can pivot and turn it into a success. So again, it's your mindset. When I think of failures, I think of them not as failures, but as key learning. So I'll give you an example from at Bayer. When I was contacted to go work at Bayer, I'm a social media gal. I just told you I worked in digital for a long time. So when the person contacted me, and it was on their consumer health business, so there's a lot of different brands there. And immediately I went to the social channels. I went to Instagram and other channels to see what they were doing. And there was nothing. So for me, I was like, oh, well, this is going to be a huge success because they should be on social media. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to help them do that. So true story, I did go in and help them launch all of their brand channels for all of their consumer brands. So these are OTC products. Now, one of the products is Bayer aspirin. And in retrospect, when I sit here today and, the day I left the company, I'm not really sure that Bayer aspirin was so successful on their social channels. And the reason why is because as we went further along, initially I thought we would treat this product as an OTC sort of consumer packaged good. And that's how we approached a lot of our consumer health brands, because it's important to look at them that way, because then the consumer would look at them. But on social, you want to act more human. Well, there's a lot more regulations when it comes to Bayer aspirin. And with those regulations, it became difficult for us to share a social voice that was relevant, a social voice that people wanted to connect to. And those were regulations both put on by Bayer and, by, the FTC and FDA and different things like that. But I will say, I don't want people to think that, oh, so we walked away from it. I don't ever suggest walking away. I always say, learn from it and pivot. There's got to be another way in. So if the door's closed, look for a window. Failures are key learnings.
Mm-hmm. So that's an interesting point. The idea that routing around the damage caused by maybe a corporation, maybe by regulation, maybe by a bad CEO. What are some of your tips on doing that?
Yeah, you have to scenario plan, right? So what I learned in that particular situation, and what I've learned in many situations, like I said, I've worn a lot of hats from owning my own business to working at large agencies to now I'm at what I'd call mid-size agency. And I think it's scenario planning. So when you're faced with a lot of no's, understand why, sort of what the execution that you can do, and write it down and take a look at it and start to think about, okay, if I can't do this, can I do that? If I cannot be on this social channel, is there another one that's appropriate, to be more specific with that example? And ask a lot of questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions when somebody says no or something's not working. Well, try to unpack it a little bit. Get more information. With more information, that's more intelligence, that's more opportunity to take a look at it and unravel the situation to come up with a better solution.
When approaching a project, what do you do first? I think you mentioned before that you went through and looked at all the social for Bear, and you saw openings. What kind of openings do you usually spot when it comes to a new project or a new client?
Every new project I look at, I want to look at gaps in the marketplace. I want to take a look at what is the opportunity and what is the need. So you don't want to create something and hope that people will come, right? You want to address a market need. So what do people want to go to? And that's what you want to develop. And I think what some people might do too much of is overanalyze that, right? So I love social media, and it's going to give you every answer that you have ever needed. You can look at YouTube, you could do search on TikTok, you can, do on Google, and you could do social listening on social channels. All the answers are there. Consumers are going to give you the information that you need. So I think we can move quick and fast to pull that information and make some decisions on what people are telling us. I mean, look at what Domino's did. They listened to their consumers and they said that the sauce was not good on their pizza, and they addressed it head on. They said, okay, we heard you. We're not delivering on our product. And they came out and admitted it, and they understood that information, by focus groups, but they also saw that on social media. And there's a lot of brands now that listen and say, okay, we should produce another color, or this isn't the right type of X, Y, or Z, and go in and address those things.
Is there anyone that you saw that did that sort of management, that sort of almost, I guess, crisis management poorly? Can you give us an example of somebody who you thought did it poorly?
Yeah, I think somebody who's managing social listening poorly. TikTok right now? Yeah, that needs to be fixed and fixed quickly. But I'm going to digress for a hot second, because the only people that are going to lose there, because I work in influencer marketing, I need to say this, are the creators that are making tons of money off of that platform. So TikTok does need to listen and address that and come up with a solution. But, I can't think of somebody that didn't do it right. And maybe it'll come to me, John, and I'll share that. But the one I do want to share that did it really well is Stanley Cup. Right. So I'm bringing something up that has been talked about a ton. Right. And their core consumer was the construction worker and, using their product. And that's what they really believed and thought that it was. Well, fast forward through social listening and hearing different things on social, that other people were using the product. So then they started leaning into it, developing all these fancy colors, coming up with limited edition. And they successfully stepped into the conversation and edited their product and changed it in order to grow their business. And they grew it exponentially. I mean, it's huge now.
What do you think happened in that case? That's a fairly unusual case. Like nobody thought about Stanley maybe 2 years ago, and then now everybody thinks about Stanley. What do you think happened internally there that gave them that edge?
I think it has everything to do with being in the right place at the right time, making sure that you have your ear to the ground on what your consumers are telling you, and being able to move fast, right? So like there are some big companies that can't lean into those conversations fast enough. So they were able to pivot make changes to their product, deliver on the promise of what consumers wanted. So it was moving fast, it was being in on the conversation, knowing what's going on. And some of these big companies aren't able to do that.
If I'm just a starting up, if I'm a startup, how could I potentially recreate that success? Maybe it involves influencer marketing, maybe it doesn't, maybe it involves just social listening.
Yeah.
What's my game plan?
Well, you led me to it. I always say that if you only have $1, now if somebody came to me and said, okay, Denise, your marketing budget is $1, I'm going to spend that $1 on influencer marketing. So when I had my own company, which was Vitola Strategies, I worked with startup brands because I had spent my career working at agency on giant brands like P&G and PayPal and Unilever and J&J. So working on all of these big brands that had big budgets, they could afford interagency teams. So huge teams of people, very brilliant people. And when I started my own thing, I said, I want to bring that level of thinking and brilliance to these challenger brands, to these startup brands, so that they can also break into the marketplace against these juggernauts. And I put together, an agency of very brilliant people that worked on some of those businesses with me. And that's what we did. And I would say 90% of the work that we did, John, had to do with social or influencer. And most of the time, it was leaning into an influencer program and creating partnerships with these influencers, because you might say, okay, well, I'm a challenger brand, I'm a startup brand, I can't afford to pay an influencer. But some of these micro influencers are just really trying to break through and popularize themselves. So you can come up with some sort of value exchange that they will benefit and you will benefit, and you could popularize your brand that way.
So let's switch viewpoints. You talk a lot about micro influencers and influencers in general. How do I, as a content creator, win in this environment, especially when there's thousands upon thousands of potential influencers that you could be talking to?
Yeah. So you mean, how do you break through in grabbing
Yeah, I
the
think so.
attention
Yep.
of somebody like me, so you can grow your channel? it, it has to do with content, right? So you have to have something interesting to say. And then when you have that interesting something to say, it has everything to do with storytelling. So don't give everything away in the lead. There's some suspense. So let's say you're making a recipe. Let's not drop the recipe right on the content. Let's say, look in, recipe below, so that somebody is engaging with your content longer, right? Draw them in with a question like, how did I do this? Or lean into other people's content. What I like to do sometimes is see something that's trending, that's out there, and do a screen grab of it, and then put that green screen behind me and start talking about a popular conversation that's going on and lending my point of view. Now
Hmm.
people are interested in my point of view. Has a lot to do with the content, has a lot to do with leaning into the right conversations. And honestly, you have to be a really strong storyteller. Not sure if you heard of Risa Tisa on TikTok. She has a sort of story that she tells. It's called "Who the Blank Did I Marry?" You can fill in that blank.
Hmm.
And the reason I believe that she's got millions and millions of followers, and she just blew up and it went viral, because she's such a good storyteller that you hang on every word. She has a 52-part series. Each of these segments are 10 minutes.
Hmm.
I devoured them
Hmm.
because she's such a good storyteller. And when she's telling the story, she tells it slow. She is very descriptive. She says, well, I'll get to that later. So I'm like, okay, well then obviously I need to get to later because I need to figure that out. So everything coupled together, um, with that content is just really, it really makes you an intriguing person to follow.
Hmm. Talk to me about confidence. I think again, your original statement uh, was expressed a lot of confidence in yourself, and I think that's warranted. How do you build that, especially in sort of a tough job market and in a tough funding market?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can build that muscle. You really can. Like, a lot of people say to me, "Oh, I love what you do on social media, but I don't like to be in front of the camera. I don't like to expose myself." Well, try it. Try it. It's just like a vegetable. People tell me, oh, I don't like broccoli. Well, did you ever try it? No. Well, did you ever try it with cheese? You're going to like it. So just try it. Get out there and build that muscle. Exercise that muscle, and then it gets easier and easier. Confidence is not an easy thing, but once you start to exude it, it empowers you.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to do more of it because it's really something that can be very exciting and very empowering.
Are there any, I guess, role models that you looked up to? Is anybody that you particularly think is doing it right?
Well, I love this question because it goes back to my dad. And quite honestly, I didn't have a great relationship with my father at all growing up. We argued a ton, but kudos to him because he was trying to make me a strong woman. And that's exactly what he did. And through everything that he challenged me with, he definitely made me into a strong woman. So for me, it's looking up to my father, who was really the first believer in me. And then I look at other women in business through my career, that I see are doing a bit of the same, and I just fall in love with it. And I think it's important to support each other and let each other know when we're doing a good job.
If somebody wants to break into the influencer marketing agency business, what should they do?
Call me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd love to have them. I would start following the top companies, Linkia being one of them, and taking a look at what they're doing, and reaching out. Quite honestly, working in influencer marketing is one of the most exciting things, and I highly recommend anyone that, because you can be an influencer and you can work in influencer marketing, so you have the best of both worlds, and it's truly exciting. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like the concept that you're basically talking to the star system, right? That used to be the Hollywood star system. Now it's something completely different,
Yeah, it's
and
attainable. It's
and
not out of
grasping that
reach.
is interesting. All right, where can people see some of your stuff?
So my most popular channel is Instagram, and that's Dee's Workouts, both with a Z,
Mm-hmm.
Deez, and then Workouts with a Z. And then you can find me on TikTok under Fit Foodie, because I love to eat and I love to
Mm-hmm.
work out. And LinkedIn, I'm Denise Vitola on Facebook, Snap, all of those things, just my straight name. And I'd love to connect. I really do. I get a lot of sort of fulfillment out of these communities that are built through social media. And some of my favorite new friends are ones that I find on social media.
All right. Well, this was wonderful because it was a nice, refreshing episode because it was only success after success, which is which is one way to go.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Denise.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed it.
This has been Keep Going, a podcast about success and success. I'm John Biggs. We'll see you next week.